It's 5:45. We will call this session of the Bloomington City Council listening session to order tonight. 6 members are present. We're missing Councilmember Lohman. I'm sure he is on his way and probably stuck in traffic would be my guess.
Texted me about 15 minutes ago that he is deep in something for work. So
okay. Very good. We have one person signed up to speak to us. Sally, good evening once again. Come on up. As I mentioned last time, kind of our rules of procedure set out, we limit everybody to no more than 10 minutes. So I think you're the only one, but we'll see how far we get with our discussion here, and I'm sure we can get as much done as we possibly can. Now, did you get your questions from last week? I think we kind of asked and answered a couple of them. Did you have any follow-up questions from last week, or are these new questions? Or
these are new questions, and I don't really feel like I've gotten a yes or no to my other questions, and I gave her a sheet, so kind of want a yes or no. Okay, so Mayor, Council, first a comment, then 2 questions. The city manager stated in an email dated May 7th, in talking with community development staff, the recollection was that the information alleged to have been misrepresentation was not material to the city's action decision at the time. Data does not support that statement. An example, July 2nd, 2012, city minutes, Winstead commented, "It's too bad the council didn't make hours a condition." Additionally, I did not see data where staff indicated hours were not material to city's action decision at the time. And the League of Minnesota lists hours of business operation as specific cup standard. Also, AFYFC/DAF did not provide information that the use would be through the night, and specifically stated Ramadan is 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. when it is through the night. Therefore, that would be a misrepresentation, not an alleged misrepresentation. So, question, is the purpose of the conditional use permit application process to ensure sufficient information is provided by the applicant, that conditional uses comply with city code, and that conditions attached enhance compatibility with surrounding uses? Yes or no? You want me to read it again? So I'll read it. Okay, question. Is the purpose of the conditional use permit application process to ensure sufficient information is provided by the applicant, that conditional uses comply with city code, and that conditions attached enhance compatibility with surrounding uses? Yes or no?
Again, I'll look to our attorney. I mean, at the face of it, what I'm hearing you ask is the application process, is that information what we use to try and make a decision as a city about a conditional use permit? If that's the question, yes.
Okay.
I mean, we use the application information to help, not to only guide, but to help make our decision about conditional use permit application.
So the second question, if the city does not ensure the applicant provided sufficient information, is the city able to ensure that the conditional uses comply with city code or enhance the compatibility with surrounding uses? Yes or no?
So, Mayor.
Please.
So, Mayor and City Council members, Ms. Ness, the conditional use permit is a quasi-judicial exercise by the council. The decision is based on the record. So that record includes things like the application, the testimony, the public hearing, public comment, discussion, staff report, all of the totality of information. And that forms the basis upon which the city council is authorized, or in some cases, the planning commission is authorized to make such a decision on a conditional use permit. The purpose of a conditional use permit is to allow a use within a particular land use classification within the zoning code that is that the body acting in a quasi-legislative manner has previously concluded when it adopted the city code that that type of land use would be allowed in that area with conditions. So there are allowed uses, and then there are conditional uses, and then there are prohibited uses. So a conditional use is allowed by city code with conditions. Typically, those conditions are put in place to manage, to mitigate externalities such as fumes or intensity of the use or hours of operation. Those are, just sort of general things that these permits are used to address. So the second question is, if the city does not ensure the applicant provided sufficient, is the city able to ensure that the condition complies? So with regard to providing a sufficient information, that would happen during the hearing, during the process. When the city council does not have sufficient information, it typically holds something over to the next council meeting or to a subsequent meeting and collects that information and then takes action. Or in the alternative, the council decides that it has sufficient information and takes action at that meeting. There are regulations under state law for the time period by which the council has to take action, or the planning commission, based on what level is doing that decision-making. And you'll see that information in every agenda item. It'll say 60 days, 120 days, et cetera. So there are timeframes that action has to take place. So with regard to compliance with those conditions, which is the second part of the second question, that's our environmental health enforcement authority. So that entity, that division of community development is charged with enforcing the conditions of a conditional use permit, just as it's charged with enforcing the other parts of the zoning code. So things like, and our other parts of our code, grass height, all of those sorts of things. So they are also in charge of enforcing the conditions, so to speak, hours of operation. They're up, if the conditional use permit approved says you have to be done at 6 p.m. and at 6:30, they're regularly still doing the activity that needed to stop at 6 p.m., that would generate an environmental health either complaint that the environmental health would investigate, or it would come about during a proactive compliance check.
So, so I feel like there's two pieces of the puzzle here then. There's the question of like, we can all sit here and speculate what happened in 2012 and whether or not the people that made the decision at the time were right or wrong. But none of us were, you maybe aside, and I don't know how you voted or whatever, but the majority of the people sitting on council or sitting on that planning commission at the time decided in the affirmative that the conditions of the use permit were met according to their best pieces of information and everything that they had compiled, right? So that's question number one. I don't know if we can relitigate that here. The second part of it though, which is if they're violating the conditional, if anyone in the city is violating conditional use, how does that get enforced? The first part being that you complain and the environmental health checks it out and tries to do something to maintain compliance. The other piece would be if we're in the middle of compliance checks anyway, and we notice that, we deal with it. I think those are the answers to your questions as far as I can tell.
Okay, so go back to, she had mentioned the totality, what people say during the meeting, the information they provide, you had a group of items. Interesting, she said what people say during the meeting. Haider Aziz was the person who spoke during the meeting. And as you recall, the former city attorney said he probably didn't represent the building. Did you guys confirm that he did represent the building? And that, like you asked if I got answers to my questions, that was, one of the main questions. The first question I had asked was, so specifically, council member said the cup is a contract and asked if it's fraud when someone makes representations to entice someone to make a contract when they don't follow through with what they promised. So that was his question. And the reply from the former city attorney said he probably didn't represent the building, but he did. I sent you all emails and the documents. He signed the application. He was listed as the applicant and he signed the amended and restated site development agreement. So you're saying he didn't represent the building?
Mayor, I
Please.
didn't pull up the email, but I pulled up all of the different documents that I had available, and those were provided. It'll take me a while.
Okay. So, yeah, he did sign the application. He is the person who signed the application. And he is the person in minutes listed as the applicant. Other than the attorney, he was the only one speaking on behalf of the building. And again, he signed it. So
Can I ask you just a quick question to ground us, me personally? How long have you lived in your house? Like, you've been there since before that, right?
yeah,
No, but it's prior to 2012, right?
mhm.
Okay, so when the people that you're referring to made this decision, did you have conversations with them about this? I'm asking just simply because it seems like you probably could have gotten better redress if you had handled it with the people who actually made this decision back in 2012. So I'm curious as to whether or not you did that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did contact council, yeah.
And what was their answer to your questions at that time?
It was difficult because understanding what had happened back then was confusing. So and I wasn't involved politically at all. I was a homemaker. So all of a sudden it was like the first thing so back then, the neighborhood was told the school was buying the property. And all of a sudden, it's going to be Al Farouk Youth and Family Center and a school. And we all said, oh, that sounds like a good use, but why didn't the school buy it? And we heard that the school had asked the city for money for the field. And then it was trying to understand all of this, what it all had meant. But we didn't care it was a school, so we didn't get involved. But then we heard that there was going to be a parking lot at the entrance of Smith Park. And I went, you're kidding me, because I was involved when they redesigned Smith Park, and that was absolutely not. That was left green space on purpose. And it was like, what's going on? Why is there going to be a parking lot here? And wait a minute, this is a school for 60 kids. Why is more parking needed? The numbers didn't add up. And then it also didn't make sense is when we moved into our house, the school was closed because it didn't have enough parking. And so I don't remember the exact words, but we understood they couldn't expand parking. And I think it was related to the water table, but I don't remember. This is so long ago. That's
Sure.
me trying to recollect, and that's so difficult to,
Sure.
I mean, it's just years.
Sally, we talked, I asked you last time, what are we trying to accomplish here? And you said that what we were trying to accomplish is to make sure that whatever this is, doesn't happen again.
And for
And-
for this council to understand what happened. So she had asked me a question and clearly get back on focus. We have a building being used through the night. What other property in residential, what other residential property is allowed to be used through the night? Residentially zoned.
Thank you. And again, just to track back to this, because I know there's quite a lot of standalone issues that you've brought to our attention over the years. So I just want to make sure we don't lose focus on this one. I guess, is the assertion here that if we had clarity on who was representing the building 12 years ago and who was presenting before us, we wouldn't have overnight uses right now?
For clarity, we had a council member in 2012 ask a very specific question that should have been answered. Was it fraud? Whether or not it was, and can you prove it? That's not the thing. It's at that point, let's slow down. Did they say they were going to use this property through the night? No. Okay, slow down. Let's figure out. Instead it went 100%. Let them have it through the night. I mean, and what was going on then? They signed an agreement with the parking lot that's closed through the night. It's like, you just go, you've got to be kidding. They can use it through the night? I mean, no documentation, no paperwork. They're just parking in there and we're supposed to go, well, at least they're not on the street. And it's like, wait a minute, but they are on the street. They're on the street with walkie-talkies.
All right.
Telling people where to.
Sally, you're way off, we're way off track again.
So again, 2012, going back to,
And as we talked about last time, if you keep bringing up stuff from 2012, we're going to have to get back to you with answers, because honestly,
oh, that's fine. You can get,
you and I were the only two in the room at that time,
right.
and I don't remember.
That's
I don't remember what I had for lunch.
That's fine getting back.
But
No,
we'll get back to you. So we'll
back on-
get back to you on these things.
definitely.
Can I ask just a quick, because I've been, you've obviously come before us these last few weeks. I'm struggling to understand. I mean, I understand in part you're looking for information and that's all well and good. What, beyond looking for information, what specific response are you looking for or asking for or expecting from the city?
Accuracy, like for instance, the email from the city manager was inaccurate. He did represent the building and he sent you guys the site development agreement with other person's name. That's not accurate. You know,
Sorry, I don't mean to.
and then,
but I-
and then another part of it, again, saying that, how did he say it again here?
And we're at 15 minutes now, so I'd like to wrap up because I want to make sure we keep things fair here. So
And accuracy is important, but that's information here. And so what I'm trying to get at is, you know, you're looking for information. I get that. And that's good. That's important. Are you beyond that, beyond accurate information, beyond information as best as the record, you know, that we can find from a decade ago when all but one of us were not on the council? What are you looking for either the city council or city staff to do?
To answer questions appropriately and accurately, and then I'm hoping it unfolds. Like an example of what could happen. When Darrell Farouk asked to increase the number of students on their lease, I don't know the specific answer to this, but according to the way, things were adjusted and some verbiage I remember, but I haven't been able to find the exact language, is at that time, the council could have said, wait a minute, but we have difficulty with the place of assembly and the numbers that are generated and the hours that it's being used. And we need to look at it before we go and approve another. But that didn't happen. If I recall again, recalling me bringing it up, saying, you're going to increase the student population, but we're still having a problem with the first application, the first conditional use permit. It's not working. The abundance of cars, the traffic, the, semis, all that stuff, that should have been addressed. But I understood we were only to talk about how the school would impact us. And and so as we unfold this from 2012 and move forward.
If I may, it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is you are continuing to ask questions, you're continuing to look for information, but you are not necessarily, it doesn't sound to me like you're making any specific requests
No,
of the city council or of the city staff. And
No.
I mean,
and I'm hoping staff,
you have raised to the extent that they do or do not violate the conditional use permit, that is a question for the environmental health department.
again, I would like these questions answered
Yeah.
for,
But that's what I'm getting at, because you're representing that
and I would like to be clear,
violating.
when the questions are answered, Jamie provided an answer to the question. If you disagree with it, that doesn't necessarily make it wrong or incomplete or that it's not the right answer. It's just an answer you didn't necessarily agree with. Jamie answered your questions in the email. I know Melissa has answered some questions in the email. Just because you disagree with it doesn't make it a non-answer or you need more information.
it's not that I just disagreed with it. It was inaccurate.
And I just
And she's,
said it was
have
inaccurate.
you verified it yet? I mean, this,
Please.
I think, yeah.
I have
And we are behind time, so we're pushing 20 minutes here.
I have the site development agreement from June of 2011, and it's not signed by the person, Bahider Aziz. It's signed by Mohammed AMR is the last.
Amir.
and there is amended and, what did I say earlier?
Amended and restated. probably.
Restated that nullifies this first one. I don't think it used the word nullifies, but it supersedes this one, amended and restated. And I sent it to, you guys read it? Can you tell her you read it?
Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but, we have a procedure here. We're
Yep.
supposed to be
Okay.
minutes. And, and we don't have anybody else waiting, but I think it's important that we follow our rules. I think that's what we're being asked to do
Yep.
here. So I want to put that forward. I'm not sure, how we
Yep.
want to handle it. Maybe we can take a vote, but
No,
I think we're good.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I can, just real quickly, because Sally, you said that my response is inaccurate. My response isn't inaccurate because what I said in here is that our staff and community development, their recollection was that the information that you're claiming was misrepresented wasn't material to the city's decision. That's their recollection. So it's not possible for me to say something inaccurate when I'm relying on staff's recollection of what wasn't material to the decision at the time.
All right. Thank you. We're going to let that stand. We'll talk to you probably next week, Sally. Thank you much.
Not next week.
Not next week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
And Guy won't be here.
I'll be hanging out.
Memorial Day.
Motion.
All right.
Ready?
So with, is there anybody on the phone that we know of?
There does not appear to be anyone waiting on the phone.
You have the name of someone else, I think, listed today.
He's not able to come in.
Okay.
Canceled at the last minute. So
So I should go front here.
with nobody else coming forward, I would entertain a motion to adjourn and head downstairs for our 5:30 meeting or 6:30 meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn this listening session of the city council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. For the record, Councilmember Lohman arrived at about
5:49.
5:49. Thank you very much for the audio record as well. So thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
So, I mean,